2 rounds in, we've seen 2 different winners in each class, but the standings remain in Terry Crouch's name by a mere 7-point gap. So we're turning the lights on and letting the sparks fly in the dark in Spain for round 3 of the Simpit Radical Series. Hi, welcome to Pit Stop TV in virtual Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. My name is Andrew Cardinale IV, Justin Prince alongside today, and Terry Crouch may not have been the winner last time out in the Netherlands, but Justin, there is no denying his prowess in the Radical SR8. He's always in the mix and always on the hunt and almost always up in the front, usually the top 3, maybe even top 5, somewhere in there. There's just no escaping Car 59 here in the Simpit Radical Series.
Been a very quick car to say the very least so far this campaign. Top of the board most of the way throughout the season in terms of practices. Top of the way in terms of most of the race pace we've seen so far. With that 7-point advantage coming in today, going to be very critical to say the very least with how that pace has played out here coming into Barcelona.
And as you can see in the night under the lights, let's take a look at the track map here. We are running the historic version, pretty close, not exact, but pretty close to what Formula 1 is running this year, as they have taken out that chicane in what is turn 12 here on the historic layout. That kind of adds a couple of corners, and you can see Terry Crouch even faster here as practice comes down to a close in just a few short minutes. But I really like this historic version of the track. Turn 10 is a bit wider. It's not quite as condensed and compressed, and of course turn 12, turn 13 a lot more fluid, and I feel like it really makes turn 13 a lot more of a corner, Justin. It really forces you to get that corner right if you want a good run down the front stretch.
This is a very difficult track to pass at in the first place, but it is doable if you are able to time it up right down that front straightaway and get brave enough to be able to stick the corner to the inside of turn 1 and complete the switchback in turn once you go to the turn 2 portion of the chicane. But this is also a racetrack where disaster can strike. Turn 5 seen several times. Roberts triangle side by side in leads to contact. The runs through turn 10 up towards that final complex can also be one of those brave passing sections where you can either get the pass done or you can spin around in a circle. So not an easy racetrack as a whole to be able to zip around at, to say the very least, especially with the speeds carried around here around the 1 minute 35 second bracket, as well as how much space you actually have to make the pass.
Over the years, in several different versions, I guess, series of racing, be it Formula 1 or MotoGP, WEC, anything, we've seen crashes here at Barcelona. And the one that stands out to me, the one that I always think about when I turn laps here, is into turn 4 in Formula 1 a few years ago. Mercedes teammates crashing into each other down into that 4th corner on lap number 1. There is danger literally around every single corner, and sometimes even before you get to that corner. It's going to be a very tough circuit for these guys to work out in the dark this evening, afternoon, whatever you want to call it. Let's take a look at the standings. I mentioned earlier, Terry Crouch is up by 7 points over Randall White. Over on the AM side, things are a little bit tighter, a little further down, but very similar points, really, spreads in both classes. Both leaders have 67 points, and on both sides, it's about 25 points back when you get down to 10th place, varying by a couple of points there, but very, very close on both sides.
Very close, very competitive. Randall White looked very solid, fairly solid, should say. Remember, though, we've seen Reinhard able the first time for the season on the racetrack. He was a contender for part of the race until some troubles on strategy and fuel. It's going to be intriguing how all this plays out. Rather Crouch on that strategy point. The major part of the AM side, though, Chris Schulweiss keeping it close within 5 points. Dustin Oberlo and Dan Carr, should say, and that's the thing. On the AM side, it's been a wide open range depending on the racetrack so far.
That it has. We're seeing that even in practice. Not to spoil anything, but things are all over the place. For example, Schultheis is well down the order. I think he's picked up a little bit towards the back. No, actually, he's dropped even further. He is now 23rd of 24 cars in practice. Meanwhile, Dustin Oberlo is up in the 17th spot. Nearly, I think it looks like 3/4 of a second faster. Dan Clark isn't here today, but Ola Sarnquist is a little ways up the order in 18th. And Colin McLeod is actually I guess now the second quickest amateur driver, as Oxenzoller has gone faster in car 75. Things all over the place in this practice session for the amateur side. In pro, it's pretty much as you would expect. Terry Crouch is fast, and then Weinhardt Heibel right behind him in second place. And there's still a few drivers in places you wouldn't expect it, but it's a lot more tame for pro so far as we open up this qualifying session. Here's a look at the schedule for this season. You can see Barcelona here, round number 3 on this April the 16th. Next week we head out to Bathurst, Okayama, Japan, on down the list, but we will get to that again in a little bit as qualifying opens up on track here. Justin, always an anxious time for these drivers, especially as they roll out into the darkness.
It's a very dark racetrack, let's put it that way, and we talked about a little bit during practice. There was a perfect window. That window passed 30 minutes ago for brightness. So you need to know where your lines are. You need to be able to be aware. You cannot afford to take a little anything off the time in the line on the racetrack, because the second you lose focus, you're likely going off of the sand trap here. If you're many of these drivers, you have to be able to know the exact limits of this racetrack if you want to survive qualifying, let alone race.
Checking out some of our onboards here today. Let's go to Chris Gennarelli as we just kind of look through the field at several different cars. Here's Chris Gennarelli out of New England into turn number 10. You can see he goes a little bit deeper in the corner, wider corner for him. And I really, really enjoy that we're running this layout here today. Here's Kenny Steps on board in car 66. How about Johnny Alfred potentially in car 710 out of the Mid-South? And I like that we've now got the club logos down on the bottom right. We can more quickly see that, for example, Andrus Lissons here from Central Eastern Europe. And I think that just adds a nice little touch. You can see where these guys are from. They're a lot more than just a name on a screen, as we see a look here on board of Oxenzoller in car 75. Again, led the practice session in AM competition, so watch out for car 75. He'll be quick.
Very quick indeed as we keep an eye on Oxenzoller. It's the question mark of how would they do in terms of the trim. He was amongst the top 10 just about in the final practice session. Some of the other drivers I've noticed are keeping it very careful, like James Dowling. Warm-up lap, noticing here we got sent off of the sand trap at least twice, and you can just see some of the drivers in gearing very, very careful on the throttle to make sure they don't go wide and get those 1Xs to be able to invalidate the lap time.
Look here, Ola Sarnquist, heavy down into turn number 1. A very tough braking zone, especially in this older Radical. It just seems like it wants to fight you in every single corner here at Barcelona. Here's a look at Reinhard Heibel. So quick last time out in the Netherlands at Zandvoort, and I think we'll see more of that again today. Even though he was second in practice, watch out for the 777 all day long in this 1-hour race. Quite frankly, I think he has to be the pick for the win. I know Terry Crouch is oh so good in these cars. I know he's got the points lead. But after the dominance we saw last time out, I think you have to pick Reinhardt for the win today. Anything else, I don't think it'd be a crazy surprise if we see Terry Crouch or even potentially Randall White go to victory lane. But really, it's got to be 777 if you want to make a bet.
I think it's a strong one, to say the very least, with how strong he's been throughout the past week or so with what we've seen for the past round, I should rather say. Tough thing's going to be compete with Terry Crouch throughout this day, making sure there's no strategy snafus, anything like that. Many of these drivers needing to pick up a lot of time, though, because it took at least a lap or two for the tires to really pick up to get to the 134s we've seen in practice.
Briefly looking through the rest of the field, even down through Nicholas Batista in car 47, as these guys get their times in. David Clymer, position 7 now. He's got to climb up the rankings. I'm going to use that a lot more this season, don't worry. 8th now. Was 7th at first. Now 8th as a few more times have rolled in. The fastest AM driver so far, Callum McLeod, in position number 10 in car 69. But Clymer, 8th in overall in pro standings, currently on track. Not so far off of Ed Sanchinelli and the rest, but he's got some work to do for sure. He's about 2 seconds off of pole currently.
Still going to be some time to be able to get things worked forward here at least. Just about everybody 1 second off their personal best times of the practice, but I noticed in terms of Heibel's lap, looking very consistent, no major slides, very efficient on the gear shifts, no stumbles trying to get the paddle to shift downward, trying to go through. There's that layout difference. You better have gotten that preparation in, because most people are used to being inside that line you just seen for the modern layout. in terms of where you need to brake.
Yeah, this layout, I think, is going to throw these guys for a little bit of a loop, but I think this will become kind of the more modern layout as we see it. A lot of tracks kind of simplifying back down from the safety rush of the 90s and early 2000s, but we're starting to see those weird wonky chicanes come out of racetracks as cars get safer, and Generelli picks up a bunch, and now Heibel picks up a bunch, back to 9-10 stuff with Terry Crouch. Still a long ways to go to car 59, but I think we'll see the 777 pick that up. But I like that you kind of mentioned that this layout is going to be different, right? This is, of course, the historic layout as it's labeled. But it is, I think we're going to see these kind of classic layouts at racetracks like this become the more modern versions, whether it's just in sim racing or in real racing, such as Formula One, going to the more historic layout later this year. Here's Aldous Pudiclis right behind the 34 of James Dowling, and that is not how you want to have qualifying go. No matter which car you are in that situation, they'll both tow to the pit lane and have to reset.
Exactly what I was talking about with the near contact, with the difference in braking lines I noticed between some of the drivers on the pace lap out, or rather the lap out pit lane. Ozenzor quietly, though, in the M class, has a decent buffer, a couple of cars for the time being over Oberlo. The question mark is going to be who picks up the tempo, especially with Oberlo trying to work on his own and slipping around the racetrack, looking mighty loose.
Yeah, and Oberlo is a half-second off of Oxenzoller right now. Oxenzoller can definitely settle in for the rest of this session. I don't think he's got to worry much at all. Dustin Oberlo has to keep pushing, and oftentimes, I think you'll know as a sim racer yourself, oftentimes when you have to push is when you make the most mistakes. So if you're able to kind of calm down and just let yourself relax and be in your element, that's when you tend to go a little faster. We'll see if he's able to do that here, but a lot of pressure currently on the 88 of Dustin Oberlo as Reinhard Heibel nearly ties the lap time for Terry Crouch to 1/100th of a second.
Very close for 1 and 2. We'll see how this time goes for Oberlo after a lot of slipping and sliding. Expect a lot of time shuffle. Not so much there in the 137.3s. That is a significant far bit back now because McLeod again is quick. Oxenzoller top 6 overall.
Yeah, Oxenzoller picked up a bunch that lap, up to a 36.247, while Oberlo now sits at a 37.323. It's more than a second now between those drivers, as big pickup there for Wernhardt. And he'll go around, but he's already done his heavy work, and I think Car 75 can certainly celebrate this qualifying session for the AM category. Here's a look at Terry Crouch finally, as he continues to do some work. I do think he's got to be, I think, on the lookout for sure. He's got to try and get this pole and get a bit more of a cushion back to Reinhard. We know how quick that 777 is. We're already talking about him being a lock for the driver you should be betting on in this case. So we'll see as Terry Crouch comes down the front stretch if he's able to go any faster. I think he needs more of a cushion. He might have just found it. Last lap picks up. Yes. Wow. Nearly 2/10 there for Terry Crouch. Much more of a gap to the 777. Here we go. Reinhardt to the line. And it's quicker there as well, but not quick enough.
Going to say about 1/10 of a second quicker. Seems like they're near identical on the pace today. It's just the difference mark right now for Crouch. With that upper hand in terms of momentum, in terms of what he carried from practice in terms of his speed. Randall White, though, I have to wonder if he's going to be able to find some ways to step up, although he looks like he's slowing down all of a sudden.
He is. I wonder if maybe he's setting up for a run on his final lap, maybe want to cool the tires down a little bit. He's got some room behind him, you can see from this wider angle. He could try and cool these tires down those last sector. I think that's what he's trying to do, trying to cool those tires back down. He's got a lighter fuel load in the car now, so he can try and push. As, yeah, he lights it back up at a turn 12, and oh, I lost myself on the track. No, this is down to the final corner. I lost myself for a moment, but here we go. Maybe a potential flyer here for Randall, we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's going to come around this upcoming time by. He backed up, I think, to cool down those tires, as you said. Try and find that speed band, because they've ran already 4 laps, and he's already seen 5 laps seems to be around the very tip of the speed band. In fact, than where some of his personal bests have come after 5 so laps. Just doesn't seem to have the same momentum that he may need on the corner ranks as compared to some of the others.
Just watching on board with car 84. Not much happening around the rest of the racetrack. Oxenzoller now in the pits. Callum McLeod is on track, but he's quite a ways back. Oberlo is now third in class. In fact, between McLeod and Oxenzoller is still nearly a full second. Nothing changing, I don't think, in that amateur fight. As we continue to just ride on board with car 84, nothing really changing either between the top two drivers. Do you think Randall has enough to get up there to Reinhardt? I mean, that's 4/10.
Get to Reinhardt. We've seen Randall White get left back pretty quickly last time out. That's my concern about closing up. If he's able to find the grip, yes. If he's able to find that confidence level compared to his teammate, yes. Problem is, I don't think he's going to be able to pick up that much with how loose he's looking and how he's missing some of the marks. In fact, he's pitting it.
Well, there's the answer for Randall White headed down to the pit lane, and that'll do it for car 84. And I think for the rest of the field, there's Kevin Burrows. A look at Terry Crouch on the racetrack currently. And let's see, where is Terry? He is actually into the final sector. He might be able to go a bit faster right at the end here of this session. No, into the pit lane there as well for car 59. I think that'll be the theme for the rest of the field. Schultheis, one of the final cars on the track. No, he's in the pit lane. Kevin Burrows, though, on track in car 426. Currently 8th in the session, looking pretty solid for TLDR. A driver that I don't think we've seen yet this season, but teammates to guys like Terry Crouch and Randall White may be helping that effort ever so slightly, or I think really trying to benefit from that effort really, as those guys are much further up the order right now. Final couple of corners for Kevin Burrows. Let's see what he can do.
Have decent momentum. It's the question, and did he pick up an off track there? Does it look like 136.2? Not good enough.
It's quicker. It moves him ahead of Oxenzoller, it looks like, unless that was invalidated. And it looks like it may have been, because that did not count for Kevin Burrows, unfortunately. But it would have been a spot or two, potentially ahead of Johnny Alford. It just does not quite count for him, as it looks like he might have picked up an off track on that lap. So no advancement for Kevin Burrows, and the lineup stays the same through all 25 cars it looks like we have. And Sean Cole, by the way, a 1:38.439. Almost 4 seconds off of Terry Crouch. A really rough qualifying session for Sean Cole. Not at all the way we wanted that to go. Wouter Vremerick, we've got Mike Nickham, Donald Warren, all those guys not turning a qualifying lap in that session. They'll be starting from the back end of the field. And as we get the field gritting up, ready to go, let's take a look at your starting order. On pole, we just saw it go down in front of us. Terry Crouch in car 59. Can he potentially get that redemption from a couple of weeks ago at Zandvoort? We'll see, as Reinhard Heibel will start to his left side. Starting from the third position, Randall White in car 84. Chris Generelli will start from fourth. Starting fifth, it'll be Pete Snake. Johnny Alford joins him there in row number 3. Meanwhile, the amateur pole sitter, that's Oxenzoller in car 75, will start from 7th. Kevin Burrows not able to go any higher on the board. He will start from 8th spot. And to round out your top 10 here, Justin, we've got Andrew Slizens there in 9th and David Clymer in 10th.
11th spot today, Dustin Oberlo will start alongside Cal McLeod, looking to try and see if he carries speed from earlier in the season. Udis Podquist, Tekla should say, in 13th, with Uwe Sarnquist in 14th. Ed Centinelli starts in the 15th position. 7 alongside James Downley, who's about to contact and qualifying. David Tamara in 17th position will start alongside Kevin Eastep. Then rounding out the top 20 today will be Cecil Fights with David Payne in 20th.
Starting 21st, some of the guys that did not have good qualifying sessions, such as Nicholas Batista and Sean Cole. And, well, Mike Nickham not able to put a lap down at all, while Wouter Van Marink will round out the field from position 24. It looks like we're rolling off of the grid. And let's just take a look at things from Wouter's perspective here, way at the back of the field. And this is the look that he gets as they roll into turn number 10, it looks like. And, yes, so a short pace lap for these guys.
Very short one, only about 30 seconds to group yourself together, be prepared and ready to roll on the racetrack. Be smart. It's going to be critical to be able to make sure you don't make mistakes early. You don't want to be that first driver to spin around.
Weather conditions today in the air, 73.3 degrees, on track 74 degrees, both in Fahrenheit and partly cloudy. A perfect night to go racing, if you will, here in Barcelona. So glad you could join us here at Pit Stop TV. A big shout out to Gomez Sim Industries, partner of the Simpit Radical Series. And out of the final corner here at Barcelona, things are opened up and we are racing in Spain. A very orderly first few corners and up underneath the Repsol Bridge to turn number 4. Things single file up in the front. Terry Crouch, the advantage. You can see a 3 wide or so in the back as we head to the third, fourth corners. David Tamira, Ed Sancinelli, side by side. Ola Sarnquist, Colin McLeod, everybody mixing it up as Oberlo sideways spins in front of Dowling. Big crash.
A lot of contact there. Dowling again involved in an incident. Not good, to say the very least, to have that happen. One of the first major straights, another one off.
Sancinelli out of the northwest, outside of, out in the grass, the gravel outside of turn 5. Everything okay there, though, as we've got a race for the lead up front. Reinhard Heibel might not take the fight yet to Terry Crouch, but he's very, very close in this opening lap. Only a couple of tenths between them. Through turn 10, still very close between these two drivers. Randall White and everybody else in order behind him.
Yeah, these three keeping very close. Good for Randall White so far. The question is, how long can he stay within distance of these top two? Most of the others, though, make sure they don't slide through the curbing. Make sure there's no other off-tracks like we just seen. Start the race and end off a few Sarnquist. Once with damage, and here it is, slow down Johnny Alford already.
Alford slowing down here on the front stretch, getting up a lot of spots. Oh, Sarnquist as well, slow on the front. 3 wide right behind him, Batista, Cole, and Estep. We're going to be 4 wide, maybe down to turn number 1. Look at this battle back here for 16th, 17th, 18th positions, 19th even with Estep. Wow, battling all over the place throughout the field. Aldous Pudiglis and Andrew Slizzens as well battling for the 10th and 11th positions. David Clymer in a battle. We've got racing all over Barcelona here.
So far, let's take a look at David Clymer right now, who's in the midst of all this. Up 1 spot so far. But so far, it's been very busy around and in front of him. Already lost a spot to Oceanzola this past lap. Right now, just trying to keep it conservative, it seems.
Wouter Vemerick, it looks like slow in the back. Troubles in maybe turn 4 potentially for Wouter. We'll see how he got turned around. Maybe turn 5 it looks like for the 668, making his first start on the season. Never want to see that in a driver's first foray into the series. At least for the season. He's run before, ran last season of the GTE cars, but here in turn 5, looks like, gets turned around. Contact there with Mike Nickham, it looks like, and that might have been a little bit of netcode. We'll have to go back and take one more look at it, but either way, not what you want to see.
No, it isn't on lap 1 or lap 2 or even in the first few minutes of a race. Look for the 668.
Wow.
Meanwhile, yeah, that's not a good line. And that's not good contact. That's going to hamper that car the rest of the way based on what we've seen, especially at Zandvoort.
Yeah, that'll be a trouble even for Mike Nickham, who was the driver making that contact. Meanwhile, race will lead. It is tightened back up as purple that time was Reinhard Heibel from second position. Watch him as he continues to put pressure here on Terry Crouch. Crouch wide through turn 3. And that's something I think he's going to want to rein in as this race goes on. You got to protect that left front tire. A lot of right-hand corners here at Spain. You got to be careful.
Got to be excessively careful with how things have played out. You see that interval about half a second. And I think at least the goal for Heibel, until you get towards the first stops of the race, keep him within arm's reach. Don't let him pull away. Think big picture as well on how you play the strategy, because of the ways we have seen the strategy game play out this season with the different stints.
Down this backstretch of turn number 10. About a half second between these two drivers. Heibel hard on the brakes. You can see these brake rotors really glowing under the lights here for these Radical SR8s. And Reinhard a little bit offline, it looked like through turn 10. So we'll see if that Get Pole Racing number 777 can rein things in at all. Terry Crouch looking pretty solid. I wonder how much the aero wash is affecting Reinhard right now. Had a really good lap last time through. It looks like it's going to swing the other way here for Terry. Is the aero wash potentially what's holding the 777 back? And is that going to be a factor all season long?
I think in terms of Heimbold, it's going to be a major factor in terms of the championship side of things. It's just going to be the time where it will take some time for him to make up a lot of the ground in terms of the standings for the time being until things really acclimate and settle things down. Looking towards some of these battles, though, Nicholas trying to find anything to go in that Kingsman racing machine to be able to go with David Clymer.
Yeah, this is the battle for 9th on track. Clymer in the 242, Puticlus in the 667. And you saw Terry Crouch purple that lap. I think we're going to see that kind of ebb and flow between those two trading fast laps up front. But Clymer and Puticlus, they just want to get to the front right now. Puticlus real wide through turn 4. Reins it back in through turn 5. A much nicer line. Right on the apex curbing as well, out to the exit curbing. And he has lost a little bit of time here to Clymer in just the first sector of this lap alone. And Clymer is now closing in on Oxenzoller, the amateur race leader currently, over Callum McLeod. I mean, that is a large gap between those two, 4 seconds or so between first and second in amateur. Oxenzoller, the leading driver there, just ahead of Clymer and Puticlus that we were just watching.
And just noticing, even in the midst of some of these turns, as you see Oxenzoller, some of these drivers just struggling to even stay next to the curbing with how they're trying to play this throttle. That seems to be the most difficult part of the grip levels right now, is just staying on the racing line while maintaining a strong enough pace to not lose ground. And some of these drivers are losing tons of ground trying to maintain that line without sliding or spinning the car out.
I only did a few laps in the Radical specifically. I went to other cars while preparing for this race. I think mostly because this Radical is definitely difficult to drive here. It does not want to get around a place like Barcelona. It was much more pleasant to drive, in my personal opinion, just my personal opinion, at places like Spa and Zandvoort's open the season up. This car requires a lot more here. This is definitely a Formula 1 track, and it shows in the way even this downforce Radical races here, or drives here. It is a downforce car. It's kind of a semi-prototype, if you will. It's got that, fendered but kind of open wheel build style, if you will. It's a downforce car, right? It just does not like this racetrack. I don't know what about it is specifically. Maybe not enough downforce. I don't know. Maybe not enough horsepower. But it just does not feel like it fits here at Spain. It's kind of a juxtaposition, and it makes it difficult on these drivers, and it's going to make passing, as you said already, a premium for sure. It's not going to be easy to pass throughout this race. You're going to have to rely, I think, on your pit strategy to get most of your positions throughout the course of this evening. And we're seeing that already. David Tamira back here behind Callum McLeod. I think Tamira, a much more formidable driver in this Radical, not able to go anywhere.
And I touched upon this a little bit with the difficulty. It's known as a track where you end up getting very bunched up, very draft heavy, very draft locked, I think is the proper term, if anything. So it's to where it's very hard to leapfrog, and if you try and fight, it can potentially lose you ground to everyone else, looking like Teclis, for example, wanting to go, usually where you make passes or mistakes like that.
There you go. David Clymer straight through on Oxenzoller. Oxenzoller now gives up that spot to Puticlus, and now it's only a one-car gap between Oxenzoller and Slizens for the amateur lead, but it's a lot more on the racetrack, 3 seconds or so still, as Callum McLeod has got his work cut out for him. But I think this actually is going to make the battle difficult for Oldest Puticlus. He's got dirty air, whereas Clymer no longer does. I think it's going to be more difficult for the 667 to actually get this position now on David Clymer, which might sound a little bit weird, but the way we're seeing this race go, you can draft to somebody, you just can't go anywhere once you get there.
Yeah, that's the toughest part of all of this right now. Looking like
and well,
saying, had to send it.
Making me a liar right there. Oldest Puticlus taking advantage of a grand opportunity. And I think showing us that the opportunity can be made so long as you take it by going about, well, 50 feet deeper in the braking zone in turn 10. But that's exactly why I like that we're on this layout. You can actually use turn 10, I think, as a better passing opportunity. You're not worried about hitting curbing if you go even a foot too deep in the braking zone like you are with the current Formula 1 layout. I like that a lot. You can really use turn 10 a lot more like a traditional corner.
We've seen that from some of the drivers so far in that traditional sense. I'm very curious how what's going to fare things out. Keep in mind, though, other drivers like Kevin Burrows trying to still find a way to make footing as well. Only up to 2 spots from the opening run, and Pete Snake is losing lots of ground right now.
Well, if Kevin Burrows is taking a sheet out of Aldous Poodcliff's book, all he's got to do is draft up to him in these next couple of corners and try to dodge the arrow wash and then use the draft into turn 10, be a little deep in the brakes, and you've got this spot. But is it going to be that easy working on a guy like Pete Snake? I don't think so, and both cars way out wide, nearly to that sausage curbing, and that's going to be tough as well. The sausage curves here, if you spear one of those, that might as well be your day over.
We've seen that a few times for drivers so far this year. Not the greatest of defensive mark there for Snake. A lot more shallower than I think he expected there. Burrows, though, if he can force a couple more mistakes like that, might be able to open up the opportunity, just not close enough to be able to fully lunge, let alone take advantage of the slide backs.
On board with Kevin Burrows, I do enjoy that we can see the gear indicator there on the dash and even the RPM lights. I love that iRacing's updated that in recent years. It used to be those were all locked and static. You couldn't see any data. Now you can at least see that, well, Kevin Burrows nearly redlining here in 6th gear. He's going to drop down, I'd imagine, into about 3rd gear. Maybe even 2nd through turns 1 and 2. Nope, 3rd it is. Curbing both corners. Turn 3, though, very tough. You're relying on every bit of mechanical grip you have because especially in the dirty air like this, Kevin Burrows, not much downforce to go around. Now up into turn 4, very similar corner, but you're just turning around 180 degrees, and it's a little bit slower as Burrows got in deep nearly to the back end there of Pete Snake. This is a really good battle. Really watching these guys having to go at it with pretty much just mano-a-mano, car versus car.
Burrows is more confident, I've noticed, in terms of the lines. You can see he seems to find more exact marks to know where he's supposed to be taking it for the most speed. Compare that to Snake, where he's trying to stay as close as he can to some of these corners, a little bit too much, and there's mistakes like that. If you take the corners too shallow, you end up sometimes exiting too much wide. Here it comes Burrows.
Not done yet, though. Pete Snake, defensive on the inside, hangs on to that spot through turn 10, and I think Kevin realizing we still have 47 minutes to go. No need to push anything just yet. If you can get the spot, awesome, but at the same time, there's 47 minutes yet to go. Call that 30 laps or so from this point. Plenty of time to try and get that spot. The only detriment is it might hold you from getting other spots, but you can do that in the pit lane as Reinhard Heibel goes fastest right behind Terry Crouch using that draft as you watch your leaders in a turn number 1 here. The 777 getting faster.
And that's as the fuel burns to be expected with the speed differential right now. The faster you burn the tank, the faster you go. In fact, Heibel fastest lap last time. Crouch nearly setting the fastest lap last time. So both of them getting quicker and quicker as this run goes on. The big question, how far can they go in the tank? Better yet, when do they take the tires today?
Well, colder track temps, I dare say they take them early. That way you've got hot tires at the end of the race. You deal with cold tires earlier. It's going to be an interesting balance. You might not even see these guys take tires at all today. Considering we have the older temps, or colder temps, you don't want to have to warm these tires up really at all. If you can prevent it, it's just a matter of how these tires hang on over the course of 1 hour of racing. And a place like Barcelona will definitely eat some tires up. A lot of flat corners that you've got to rely on downforce for. You really eat into your mechanical grip, and your mechanical grip is controlled by, guess what? The tires. That's the only thing holding you down to the racetrack, or I guess holding you on the racetrack, or how you want to look at it. The only thing that makes contact between the car and the track is those rubber tires, so you've got to be very, very careful with them at a place like this. Problems maybe. Colin McLeod slow into turn 10, lets a lot of pros go by. Oh man, that, I mentioned it, I think it was last week, maybe even 2 weeks ago. Wow, that was a really big catch into turn 12 as well for Callum McLeod. But I forget when I went on this whole soapbox, but Justin, there is a big difference here in this class structure versus a lot of other leagues that do this kind of pro-am kind of class split in the same cars. These guys earn points separately. Now, Callum McLeod loses nothing by letting these guys go by, aside from the fact that he is now much further behind Oxenzoller, calling a 7-second gap. What would you have done in his position where you've got guys like David Payne, Sean Cole, and David Tamira breathing down your neck wanting to go by in their battle?
I looked right when it comes to McLeod. He did make one mistake coming out of one of the corners into turn 9, out of turn 9, I should say. But the tough part is, if you let one go, everybody else in that entire line is going to say, I have to go too. And that's where, in a lot of cases, big ones happen, wrecks happen, trouble happens. And McLeod got the tamest version of it where he loses all the spots in the time. You do not want that to happen at all as a driver.
Kenny, step in the pit lane. I don't think this is planned. And no, I really don't think it is. You can see James Dowling there. He's recently headed to the pit lane as well. I wonder if these two happenings are connected potentially for cars 34 and 66.
Within 6 seconds of each other going to the pit lane, Dowling had already lost tons of time. I don't know, both of them already have damage, but one of them picking up damage from a different time period. And I wonder if this is self-inflicted.
Well, let's ride on board with Kenny Stepp of the 66 car. Following it, looks like, is that Wilder? I'm not sure. No, I think that's Nicholas Batista right in front of him in the 47 car. There's Kenny Stepp's problem. That is out of turn 3, very early in the lap. But then a little bit later, James Dowling seemed... No, Dowling was actually further back. It was a different yellow car.
Yeah, Dowling had carried on, it looks like, with the damage and tried to race as long as he could, but just had to come in and said, you know what, I have to get this damage fixed. I'm losing too much time. And both of them having to take a long time getting repairs now.
Yeah, the 34 had this damage for a long time. I'm not sure if you can find exactly when it happened, but this car was really, really messed up for a long time in this race. It looks like since lap number 1, and, well, let's take a look at it. James Dowling, this is lap 1. What happens to the 34 car?
I think this is the one we looked at where they went up in the air, remember?
Ah, that might be it. Yeah, out of turn 4. Headed down to turn 5. Let's take a look. It is lap 11. This is a replay of lap 1 on, well, with 42 minutes to go in the race. James Dowling continued on for a long time, realized he finally had to pit as Terry Crouch goes purple, finally breaking into the 134s. This a look on board with James Dowling early in the race, and I think we're going to have this explained. Yeah, I think it is lap 1 incident. There we go with Dustin Oberlo. And that is very important, I think, for the championship as well. Not even I think, I know. Because Oberlo out of this race as well. We haven't seen him since this accident happened. This is really, really huge for the amateur battle. We'll take a look at it one more time here. Loose out of turn 4, trying to hang on to it. Massive, massive hit.
And that's why Dustin Oberlo already is a part of the DNF list in turn today, as well potentially might have a couple more. Donald Warrington to make the start, mind you. So the interesting mark now, I think it's more so the focus point of what is going to happen up towards the very front of this field, with Heibel starting to apply the pressure on Crouch this lap.
Yeah, Terry just went fastest, breaking into the 134s for the first time today, and Reinhardt used that draft, I guess in the front stretch and the early portion of this lap to really close in, and is putting pressure on the 59 car. Much cleaner run into the corner there for Reinhardt, but a better exit for Terry Crouch, and I think we're going to see that. That seems to be just how these cars work. The lead car able to get a better arc as the trailing car tries to stay a little deeper into the corner, a little farther to the right or left, inside anyways, to get some more downforce. And, well, that lap, Terry was slower by 0.3, but they were in the mid-135s. In fact, Randall White that lap was faster than Terry Crouch. A pass attempt maybe here out of Reinhard Heibel for the race lead.
The guy both thinks he's saved enough fuel. Time for him to go is what he's showing with the car language. There he goes.
And he's got it through turn 3. Leaves Terry Crouch in the dust. What can Terry do here through the mid portion of this lap? Or does he use the draft now to try and save some fuel?
You might see him actually try and say, you know what, may as well save a little bit of gas. Think a little bit on that. It's close to the pit window soon.
Oh, that corner. I think Terry knew as soon as he turned in, it was too early. And Reinhardt got a much better run out to turn 7 now, and you can see the effect of it very, very quickly. Reinhardt has driven away a half second and growing.
Yeah, that might be a bad sign, actually, if anything, now that I think about it, because if Crouch can't keep up here in these next few laps, as in stay within that 1 second mark, Eyeball might set sail.
I think Reinhardt is doing just that. 6/10 and growing. Continue to put time here on Terry Crouch. They are approaching a lapped car, I believe. That is Wouter Van Mariek in car 668. And Wouter, hopefully I'm getting most of your name now correct. I know that was a challenge last season. Here we go. Terry Crouch pitting. As soon as he got past the race lead, he knew it was time. Question is, Justin, do we see him go up on the tracks? We've seen that be a topic of debate early on in this season. And I think this might be one of the rounds that we see more division between choices here. Terry into the box. Does he go up on jacks? No, not yet. No, he does.
So there's that tire strategy you talked about. Burrows, Nicholas, Climber amongst those coming in this time by, so it seems to be a fairly consistent team strat. The trouble thing is going to be, how long can Heimbo go in comparison with all the fuel saved? That was a 13-lap stint for Crouch, and majority of those drivers, those who were battling a bit, were stuck in the traffic, I should say.
No tires for Burrows, tires here for Climber. McLeod of the box, tires for Putiklis. Schultheis in, no tires on the 008. Tires, though, on 13 of Olar Sarnquist. Now, who is that behind? That is a white car. I'm not sure who that is right behind Schultheis. I'm sorry, it's a step right in front. Schultheis, in fact, I guess, doesn't take tires. Interesting.
Well, some split calls, it seems, right now to think about. Do we take the tires? Do we keep the old rubber on? That's going to be intriguing in terms of a little bit of that time differential later on in the race, but still, battles like this one may open the floodgates of drivers. The tough thing is, if they're still bumper to bumper to bumper, how do they handle a pit entry together?
Yeah, this will be tough if Sean Cole decides to... well, it won't be tough for Sean. All right, he's at the back of this. He can kind of just peel off whatever he wants to. But the guys in front of him, David Payne, David Tamira, it'll be a little tougher for them. Do they want to dip in? Do they want to keep the draft? Do they check up? Sean may have to check up for them. We'll see as... whoa! Slowdowns, maybe.
No, that was Payne cutting the whole curbing. What are they doing?
Tamira...
Did they think they were supposed to take that corner?
It looked like Tamira peeled off as if he was either confused as to where pit entry was or if he was trying to serve a slowdown. Here's the onboard with David Payne. Very, very confusing situation here. Tamira.
I don't get what. I honestly don't understand the reason he even bobbled there, let alone why both of them went down there. Unless they forgot what turn they were or forgot what layout, none of that makes sense.
Very confusing moment here. One more look at it. David Payne, David Tamira on their in-lap. The only thing I can think is they thought maybe that was the entrance to the pit lane. Maybe not enough practice trying to get to the pit lane and practicing qualify. I don't know. And Sean Cole pits and takes a 2-for-1. And they're going to have a lot of damage to their cars now. I mean, you can see David Payne really bearing the brunt of that damage. The nose is completely destroyed.
Yeah, Payne is going to be in a lot of trouble from that. If anything, Payne's now into damage control. He's already lost at least 4 spots. And I've noticed one thing with the damage. The car's kind of not rotating well, but the difference here, too... Heimbo, even with a longer pit stop, 2 seconds nearly up the track.
Yeah, I was just going to say, while all of that happened, a whole lot changed in the back. Reinhard Heibel now your race leader. Well, by a whole lot more, and you can see the difference in times there. Terry Crouch, 21.6 in the pits. For Heibel, it was a 22.3. But the difference on the racetrack, quite large. What we didn't catch is whether or not, to confirm, Heibel took tires, but I'd imagine by that pit time that he definitely took 4 fresh tires on that Radical and is going to use them to his advantage. Question is, how quickly does he try to break them in? Because Terry Crouch now is making some time back up in the early sector of this lap.
I think that's going to be a little bit of the difference on the cool tires versus some warmed up, should say. After all we've seen in qualifying, about a 1 second difference between the first and second laps. Heibel dealing with those cold tires, going to have to deal with that suffering for the next lap and a half. Crouch already has them up to a decent temperature window.
That is that lap difference, you're right. As Terry Crouch continues to try and work on him, but further back, problems maybe for Tamira blinking. Right in front of Sean Cole as they battle for 12th and 13th. Sean not able to take advantage, it looks like, of Tamira's misfortune. However, David Payne is much further back and has Callum McLeod in the mirror. An amateur recap, if you will. Auction Zoller, 11th on the racetrack currently in position number 1 for amateur, position 11 for overall, ahead of Tamira and behind Clymer, kind of in his own zone. 5 seconds behind Clymer, 2 seconds up on Tamira and change. Second in amateur, you'll find Colin McLeod. Third, Chris Schultheis in the 008, picking up a lot from practice. Good to see for your amateur points leader coming into today. Mike Nickham is 4th in class. 5th, you'll find Ola Sarnquist in the 13 car. 6th, Nicholas Batista. 7th, it looks like, is Wouter Van Mariek, and then Kenneth Stepp in the pit lane parked. Meanwhile, Justin, your leaders, they're a little closer together. 9/10 now between these two. Terry actually making some ground up.
Again, that difference a little bit in terms of lap factoring in. I think they are starting to even out a little bit on those tire temperatures. That's going to be the most difficult part of fully closing back in here, because the overcut seemed to be that much stronger for Heibel on how he played the strategy. Also is the question mark too, how would things turn out for the late stage layers? I think it's a safe 2-stop no matter how you slice it, because it's about 8 laps away from the 13 to go mark, but it's still the question of how much fuel do you have to put in the end, and Heibel's got that upper hand.
I'm pretty curious as well here for Terry Crouch. Does he have enough fuel? He underfueled, it looks like, compared to Reinhardt. Did Reinhardt not save enough for what he wanted? I'm curious about the fuel levels in these cars and how they feel about them, what the different agendas are between these two, because you mentioned Reinhardt was able to save that entire first stint behind Terry until he made that pass and then Terry pitted. Reinhardt must have been saving fuel, right? Or at least trying to. But it seems like he went for a longer stop. It's only 7/10 of a second in the box, or I guess 7.5, so 3/4 of a second. But that is plenty of fuel in the pit lane. That's a gallon or two at least. Kind of odd that Heibel would be the one saving fuel and then overfill unless he's trying to run a really, really hard stint here to the end.
Technically, I think both of them are at this point. It's the difficult factor of now that you have a green flag run going to be going at this mark. Or rather, I should say, once you've now had the pit stop, you're not going to be able to go as far. So that's going to be a major factor.
Well, further back in the field, Sean Cole, David Tamira, they are close. Cole, though, falling back, this for 12th. And behind them, Payne and McLeod still very close. These really the only two proper battles on the racetrack as you would know them. And McLeod is actually a lot closer to Payne.
And McLeod at this point, I think it's a little bit of a recovery point at this mark amongst those who didn't take the tires, for one. And two, needs to find a way to close up a lot of ground on Auction Zoller, and the problem is he's just falling further and further back. Ever since that situation with the curbing and having to let drivers go. He's gone backwards and basically has been running backwards on a treadmill.
A little bit of news, unfortunately, Wouter Van Mereyck has parked the car. A lot of damage there, and I think you can see exactly why he's parked it. Did not tow, so he drove into the pit lane, but it looks like a lot of trouble here for the 668. Let's go back and take a look and see if we can find exactly where this one happened. Really, really big trouble for him. This is well back in time, and we still have not completely found it, so something really big here happened to Wouter. I noticed as well, Kenny Stapp finally back on the racetrack, so it looks like things are turning around for him. He's able to get back out there and run some laps, but here is the trouble for the 668. Wouter Van Mereyck behind the wheel.
Noticed he had several off tracks, already had one cut corner there, picked up a
That's
black
not gonna do
flag
it.
at least. Yeah, then... Not sure why he just said, you know what, I'm going to stop turning here for a minute.
Frustration.
And then into the wall. Yeah, just said, you know what, I want this to be done.
I think that was frustration for sure there for Wouter. A really tough first stint. A lot of trouble there, it looks like, to that first sector. It is a tough piece of racetrack. It's not easy to get through there at speed, so I can certainly understand the frustration as he finally let go of the wheel for a moment and said, Jesus, help me out here. Unfortunately, Jesus did not smile upon him, hit the wall, and maybe next week will be better for Wouter.
News? Cloud's trying to pass by a very wounded Payne, and the thing is, he's lost
Here we go.
another 2 seconds. Having to go. Can't be held up here.
Very odd opportunity there, but Colin McLeod takes it and pays the price as here comes Chris Schultheis. Contact maybe in turn 9. Very close between those two, but the battle quickly gets worked out as Colin McLeod is now on the offensive as he's been, well, robbed, I guess, of 15th position. Gave it right up to Chris Schultheis, who steals it, goes on through. It is now second in amateur class, and this is important because while they are deep in the field overall, these guys are only racing for amateur points. They don't lose points by pros being in front of them. So this is for second and third points. I love this format. I think more than some leagues that make it point per position, then just split them later. I love that these guys get full points for their position no matter what class they're in.
Here's the thing when it comes to that, and the reason McLeod was trying to push so hard to get around Payne. Remember, Payne's got that significant front end damage that's making him that much slower, so he had to go when the opportunity presented itself. It just didn't have the speed, it seemed, to be able to make it stick in a very single file line section. Downside, if he didn't go there, I think Schultheis still makes the move.
Absolutely. It was backing the 69 up to Schultheis. I think at some point that pass was going to be made regardless of Schultheis. Real loose there through turn 4. Gave up a little bit of time, but I think more so just showing that there's a chink in the armor as one car's around. David Payne right in front of these two. Well, that made that easy.
Yeah, that made it very easy, to say the very least, and it's funny how race cars manage that.
It's just, racing is as racing does. It's so weird. The racing gods definitely, it's weird. It's just weird. I think that's the best way to put it. It is simply quite odd the way racing works sometimes. The racing gods giveth and the racing gods taketh for sure. And David Payne goes around in turn 5. Gives that spot to Chris Schultheis. Look at this battle. This is for 12th. Sean Cole right back on David Tamira. Two of the more colorful liveries in this series, and they are doing some serious battle as they came flying around those final couple of corners. Tamira still with all of that damage from the curbing excursion we saw on their in-lap. And Cole looking around.
Also has some rear end damage. A little too much curbing, though, to check him up.
That was close. Maybe some contact there in turn 1 as well as David Payne is going to pit. I think that's a little bit early, but that actually might work out for David Payne. He might be able to pit now and not again the rest of the race. We'll see if he's able to kind of work that out as Sean Cole continues to work here in David Tamira. I'm noticing some other battles popping up. How about Kevin Burrows, Johnny Alford for 5th?
A lot of squabbling here. Johnny Alford very quietly holding on in that average described race car. Burrows, though, wanting to find a way to lug his way up into the top 5.
through turn 12. A big lift there for Burrows. Turn 13 going to be tough for him then. Yeah, the tires are gone here on the 426, I think. If I recall correctly, he did not take tires on that first stop. I think Alfred did. It's a second difference between the two of them in the lane. I think Alfred's got tires and Burrows is paying the price.
I mean, to give credit to Burrows, though, I think this also shows the pace that Burrows has.
Absolutely. Well, and
to be able to, yeah.
I mean, I think he's clearly got the pace that Terry Crouch has, at least in the car. It's up to the driver then to match that. They're both TLDR drivers. Theoretically, he should be on the same mark as Terry Crouch and Randall White, and it's showing that he's able to use at least about, I'd say probably 90% of that. He's just trying to find that extra 10%, and lately he has found at least a portion of it. He's very quick, right on the back end here of Johnny Alford, really hounding him for this position.
And the tough part again is going to be, when can he go, when can he go? And again, we've talked about it's not as simple as that. Here's the major thing. The more he stays behind Alford, the more he can save a little bit to try and even himself up to high bull cycle possibly, because remember, he had to put the same lap as Crouch. It was amongst those who didn't really save as much.
That was a rough turn 10 there for Kevin Burrows. I think he slowed himself down for an extra moment there, a half second or so before he got back to the throttle, and it definitely hurt him a little bit. That said, he's battling through the aero wash. You see it again in turn 12. Between the aero wash and the older tires here for Kevin Burrows, he is really struggling in those faster corners to end the lap, and it really hurts him here on the front stretch. Right where he would have a good opportunity into turn 1, Justin, it just hurts him so much in those final two corners. He can't take advantage of this front stretch.
That's the most difficult part, to be able to fully make this pass right now. If you aren't within a couple car lengths, maybe even a car length and a half, you can't get close enough to legitimately send it up the corner. That's why there's all that frustration there as a driver, knowing it's so difficult to fully close that up, unless you get bubbles like that when it bubbles.
Burrows looking great, right on the apex there through turn 5. Much nicer looking than Johnny Alford. Alford, though, not opening the door just yet. Just kind of knocking on it, I guess. Maybe running to answer the door, potentially unlocking the door. It hasn't opened it up yet, though, for Kevin Burrows. When will the time happen? Maybe here. That was a wide exit for Alford. That might open the door in turn 10 if Burrows is optimistic enough. No, he stays back. Wise choice there, I think. Stays behind the 710. One more corner, wants to play this nicely. Still 22 minutes to go. And earlier I mentioned about 25 minutes ago that there were still 47 minutes to go. Burrows taking his time, not wanting to get himself in a bad position here, not wanting to spoil something that's going to go good for both of these guys as Alford bobbles. You've got one car pushing, one car bit free.
A little bit too much of a push again. Burrows onto the curb, though. Again, it's feeling a bit more so the strategy side, but also a mix of both of them, where Alford's making little mistakes that Burrows needs to take advantage of. The problem is Burrows is also, in turn, not able to capitalize it and follows up with a mistake of his own. And that's, again, the chess match where you're trying to make move after move after move to try and plot things around and plan the battle and plan to make a pass. Oh boy.
Here we go, back to the fight with David Tamira. Sean Cole, the closest I think Cole has been in this fight. He's going to draft up to the right side and try to make a pass here to turn 1. Sean Cole on the inside, David Tamira on the outside, and finally, pass complete for car 39. That goes for 12th position. Tamira, though, not out of it at all. A very, very talented radical driver. Going to bring the fight right back to car 39, I think, although he may opt to just kind of relax with that blinking issue he's got ongoing currently. He may opt to just kind of sit back and play nice. Maybe not. That was real close through turn 4. And now Tamira falls back. Up front, Terry Crouch back within a second of your race leader. And on the front stretch, one more lap complete. They will have about 14 to go that time by-ish with 21 minutes left on the clock.
Crouch's credit, he's kept within the 1 second buffer that we talked about and he needed to do. Downside, lap traffic up ahead for the first time today. How will the lap traffic play things out? It's a legitimate question. A lot of these drivers have to wait to see what happens for. especially at this track where it, as we've seen, if you even unintentionally move over, it can cause trouble.
You know what I saw there in turn 3, Justin, is a flip-flop from earlier in this race. When Terry was leading and Reinhardt was chasing, Terry washed out much further wide in turn 3, and Reinhardt had a much nicer line on the inside of the corner. That time through, it was the complete opposite. Terry much nicer, much cleaner to the inside, the apex, the curbing, and Reinhardt got way out there, and I'm sure is using a lot more of that left front as he tries to wrestle that car to the right. Even here in turn 9, I think that looked much better for Terry Crouch, but we'll see if that makes any difference. I'd love to get tire data. Wouldn't that be nice if ATVO brought us tire data? Hopefully one day, but it's not really available. I don't think iRacing really transmits any of that, but that would be a real help here, as if we could see the tire wear for these drivers and know just how much they're pushing each one of these corners of their car. But this is going to get challenging. As you mentioned, this is, I think, the first time we've seen real lap traffic for these leaders.
Yeah, and now it's in case of Sarnquist, I'm both utilizing that more so as the draft. I think Sarnquist is trying to stop down the side of the road to let them go. That's a massive difference.
Gotta let Terry go as well, and he will, but it's real close there to the entry of turn 1. That's the one thing. If a driver, and I guess I'm opening the soapbox back up, if a driver is going to let cars go in a battle, you've just got to make sure to give the equal opportunity to each driver, right? You can't let one go and hold the other up. You've got to be cognizant of what you're doing in that case. Realistically, it's a better situation, better choice in my opinion, to just run your line. The leaders will find a way by you. Just be accommodating to them once they get alongside of you. But if you're going to lift like that on a straightaway, you just got to make sure to get both cars by before you get back on the accelerator and challenge in that corner. And that was real close. Thankfully, it worked out, but could have gone the other way. As we see a pit stop, Kevin Burrows into the pit lane and is right back out, I think, opting for no tires again. Bold move.
I think he's just trying to be able to cycle in front of Alford almost with this. Tamara also in. This is right on that number we talked about, just past 13 laps to go. So it looks like just about a 1 lap difference of fuel, still enough for some of the drivers. In fact, most of the drivers think to make it.
Well, you really don't want to have to take tires on this pit stop if you don't have to. And I'm just now, I don't know why I realized this, didn't realize this earlier, but the reason Burrows just kept those tires on, he was able to take a lot less fuel. Look at his pit time here, 17.18 seconds. He was able to really cut some time out of that stop by not taking tires. If he had taken tires, it would have been more like a 21-second stop, 22 seconds even. So you really want to pit for tires only that first time. Here's Terry Crouch. Tires, of course, not going back on this car. He's got those tires to the end here, but the same deal. I'm sure we'll see a shorter stop here for Crouch when it's all said and done.
Yeah, you see him not on the jacks. It's about a 2-second difference, make it about 3 seconds. There he goes. Heimbold, though, might be able to take a little bit of quicker stop since he was able to save before and able to stretch it an extra lap than he can. To
my knowledge, though, Reinhardt did not take tires in that first stop. Or no, I think he did. It was a 22-second pit. We'll see. It's going to be interesting. I'd imagine then probably on the same strategy, and I think we're going to see that strategy then hold the rest of this season unless we go somewhere that's really, really hot, which actually could be either of the 2 Japanese rounds, even next week at Bathurst, depending on how hot it is. We could see tires forced potentially on 2 stops, but I think for the most part this season we'll see this kind of strategy where you pit the first time for full service and then you just try to take as little fuel as possible the second time around.
Like what I was talking about there. Expect more pit stops this time. It's not going to help that the car in front is coming in. That's impressive though. Heimbold might be able to have at least a couple second quicker pit stop here. That might be a big difference here.
I love what Brandon Carl said in the chat. A wise man once told him, getting out of the way often leads to getting in the way. That's exactly right. Oftentimes with a slower car, it is much more beneficial to you and those around you to simply hold your line and play nice. As we see Randall White headed down the pit lane here, this will be, I think, the telling sign of what all of these leaders are doing outside of just Heibel and Terry Crouch. Let's see how long this stop goes for Randall White, how much fuel he was able to save. And he was on his own, I believe. Maybe racing a little bit with Generelli, but more so on his own for car 84.
For White again, this is around that strategy to be expected out for it again. Wouldn't be surprised to see things cycle a little bit differently, though, intriguingly. Noticing that the 75 has had a good pit stop window, too, to be able to be sitting in front of Colin Burrows still. Alfred's still taking the time with no pits, rather no tires.
Yeah, we're seeing these guys, I think, really start to learn this strategy now. Full service, as much fuel as you can pack in that first time. There goes Putiklis, 18.9. He was not able to save much fuel that run then. Kevin Burrows pitted 2 laps ago. He's right on Johnny Alford.
Oh, that's close. I think he was hoping for a little bit more distance in front of that Pepsi machine than that. But again, he'll settle with what he can settle here. The tough part is he's got to make the pass pretty soon. He wants it.
Didn't take tires. I think he really needed to earlier, but it's going to work out anyways. Wow, powers through in turn 4 and passes the 710 of Johnny Alford finally. Finally, that hard work pays off with 14 minutes to go. Props there to Kevin Burrows. Solid stuff as we see Santinelli now in the pit lane and others finishing up their pits as there is Reinhard Heibel in the pit lane taking his final service of the day. We'll see as Terry Crouch is closing in quickly just how much time Heibel spends in the pits. A very short stop, 16.3. He's got this win in the bag.
As expected, being able to take less fuel on that stop because of how he played that strategy. At this point, all he has to do is make no mistakes, no bobbles, no slides, no whammies, in the words of Kurt Busch.
Meanwhile, Pete Snake in the pits. Taking service here. Slizen's in as well. Here comes that 99 machine. And Pete Snake will be launching here shortly on the chip, waiting to release the clutch. There he goes. 16.88 in the box. There's Slizen's in the lane. Oxenzoller as well. His final stop. Sean Cole also in the pit lane in car 39, waiting to be released. There goes Slizen's, a 17.08. And we wait the release here of car 75. Your amateur race leader. Sarnquist yet to pit is going to close in, but will not hold that position. As Oxenzoller, just like Heibel out front, he's got this win in the bag for amateur competition.
Yeah, he's been untouchable. In the air races, it's been back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Today, Oxenzoller's just been on the money, on the marks, very consistent, very much in the same realm for his lap times. Very difficult to close in as this closes our pit window.
Yeah, this is the final car we expect to pit all race long. Ola Sarnquist pitting out of the 14th position, starting to drop down the order, but back to your amateur leader, Oxenzoller. I'm really excited to see how this guy does the rest of the season. At first, we thought he was a pro driver. Based on the sign-up sheet, he's been officially designated as amateur, but I think he definitely could have been a pro driver. Fits right in with that crowd. Right around that top 10 cutoff has been great today. At some points was in the top 10. More recently let, I believe, Slizen's back on through, potentially Climber. I don't recall exactly which car he let back through, but has been fantastic regardless so far in car 75. And it might take him a little bit to move up the order and actually fight for the championship, but I think certainly a lock. By the end of these 10 races, Oxenzoller has to be in that fight.
Has to be at this point, the way things are shaping out. Very strong throughout this entire race, I will say today.
And here's the other guy he's going to be fighting, I think, Chris Schultheis.
Yeah, Chris Schultheis, will say, has been also very quietly strong today. But the thing I will say when it comes to how things have gone, again, we've seen this with Clark, we've seen this with Overload, we've seen this with McLeod. They've been very quick at times throughout this season, but have had troubles in the rounds they've been quick in most cases, except for, well, what we've seen today from Oxenzoller. So consistency wins championships. Consistency from round to round is going to be critical for all those names just mentioned.
And all Oxenzoller has to do now is just stay consistently in front of Chris Schultheis. That's all he's got to do. We'll see around, I'm sure, where Chris ends up third, around where he ends up fourth, around potentially where he still wins a race or two this season. But I think Oxenzoller at his peak is definitely the best amateur driver this season so far. That said, no Phil Scruton in the field today, no Dan Clark. Dustin Oberlo, I think, is surely in that fight as well, but had a very early exit, made the mistake on lap 1, and was clobbered by James Dowling. So, things are going to change in this amateur fight, but I really feel like the top 3 in this class, in no particular order, are Crystal Theis, Dustin Oberlo, and Oxenzoller. I think Oxenzoller could make a very solid case to be the top of those 3, but miss around, he's way back in this fight, right? He's 8th place now. Really needs to make up a lot of points. As I said, though, he's got this round and 7 more to go. If he just keeps outscoring Crystal Theis, eventually that gap will work his way. Whether it's a point here, a point there, 2 points here, 2 points there, 3 points here, 4 points there. Just keep chipping away at it, and I think this battle will flip the other way. Over on the pro side, Randall White, Pete Snake, Andrew Slizens, those guys are pretty consistently towards the front, but maybe a little further down. David Clymer, I think, will move around. Johnny Alford's been great today. David Payne is way down the order compared. In fact, he's in 22nd out of this race. I think we're going to start to see Reinhard Heibel come in and might not go for the championship, considering how far he's not even on the screen yet. Missed the first round at Spa, but I think Heibel will definitely be a top 5 consideration for the championship.
Yeah, I think you can argue with some of the drivers back there. Is again, you can see the long-term picture with all the different circuits on the schedule, as we talked about. Remember, it's Bathurst next, right? And the toughest thing is when it comes to Bathurst, you can't make any mistakes there. It's simple that the walls are so compressed on the mountain, where if you put your tires off one line, 1 inch, couple inches, you're slamming to the wall and may take 25, 30 of your best friends with you in terms of stacking up and blocking the racetrack. You got to be careful there.
It is maybe a lock that we have at least one large incident next week, as Aldous Putiklis has trouble off the racetrack a little bit out of turn 13. And he works his way back onto the circuit, loses the spot there to Sean Cole. But I think it's a lock next week, Justin, that we see at least one major crash. We saw the one major crash, I guess, on lap 1 here today, but it was rather minor in terms of what we could see next week. And I think it really all starts in the cutting. I'm excited to see these guys go to Bathurst next week and have to contend with those concrete walls only inches away. But I do think we're going to see the field significantly thinner on lap 2 than it was on lap 1.
I think indeed we will. And keep in mind, it might be the highest attrition point of the season based on the track schedule. So got to be keeping an eye on that one. These competitors still. Under 8 minutes still to go on the clock in this race, though, I will say. This track has gotten extremely dark. Dinner.
Yeah, I love this round. I really do. Last season, I don't recall having a night race with the GTE cars. I know we've had some night races on road before. I know we had one in the Scar Radical Series at Charlotte, actually. Maybe that's where Terry got the inspiration, but he asked me when the season started, before the season started actually, to find a round where we could run in the dark, whether it was under the lights or just in the dark, at night, and this was the best one. This was the one that had the most lights. At first they wanted to run Long Beach. Unfortunately, Long Beach does not actually have night lighting. This is honestly pretty spectacular to see. This, I feel like, has to be a lock for a lot of leagues. Once you find out that Barcelona has this many lights, I know it's not fully lit, certainly not able to run Formula 1 cars here or anything without lights realistically, but this looks really, really spectacular. This would be a really solid track as well for an endurance race. To run overnight, a 24-hour would be fantastic with this kind of lighting. Props to iRacing and Circuit of Barcelona Catalunya. This looks fantastic, as Reinhard Heibel has just a couple of laps to go to wrap up this race. 6 minutes on the clock, 5 laps on the track, maybe 4.
And so far, Heibel hasn't had one tire really slide around one too deep of a mark. Terry Crouch, still going to be a championship contender, I think, throughout this entire campaign, obviously. But the tough part is, this is now the pace with Heibel being much quicker long-term for a second straight round, even with the strategy snafu last time from Crouch.
Yeah, I think Terry is a lock for the championship as we stand. David Payne, Randall White, other guys just not able to contend on a week-to-week basis. I mean, Randall was 14 seconds off his teammate. And I'm not trying to say Randall can't win. He won plenty of times in the GTE cars last season, or at least contended for wins enough. But it's just, there is a disparity right now between your top two and everybody else on the pro side. Terry's already got the points over Randall. It's going to be probably 10 points the gap after today. Going into Bathurst next week, we'll start to see Reinhardt, I think, on the listing. But unless Terry ends up out of one of these races, maybe even two out of these races, I just don't know if Reinhardt gets there by the end of the season, even though he should be potentially outscoring Terry at least every other week or so. Right now, the trend would be every single week. As we watch this battle, David Clymer, Andrew Slizens. I'm excited to see where these guys end up in the championship as well. I know we're talking very final, I guess, about the championship, and it's only round 3, but already we see a very clear picture. I think it's up to the tracks now to kind of change things up. If these guys were to be let go in a straight line, we see Reinhardt Heibel, Terry Crouch, Randall White, that's the order. But Bathurst can absolutely change things next week. Other rounds, I think Okayama is an outlier. It could be a little chaotic for those guys. Suzuka even could be. Long Beach could certainly change this field up as Oxenzoller lets a car by. That's Sean Cole. David Clymer here on Slizens was close, has fallen back.
We'll say for Clymer, he's been consistently very much running in this final race. He's been consistent, similar to the way we've seen from a few of the hours in pace. Both guys, keep in mind, already one off track. That's lost him a spot to McLeod in turn. Joe Vines is starting to crack a little bit under this pressure and starting to really pile up some of these mistakes. Another bit of an off track there.
Yeah, just a little bit ago, he was still in that 12th, or I guess, well, second position in class. It was not long ago. But Callum's got it. Here he goes. Wow, Chris lets a lap car on through. I think that was, oh no, that was the leader. That was Reinhard Heibel. That makes a lot more sense now. And this could inject a little bit of, I guess, awkwardness in some of these battles here towards the end. If he's up to Schultheis now, one lap down, he could end up knocking on Callum McLeod's door very soon. We'll see. And McLeod is not too far up the road from Oldest Pudiclus, where he's at now. So this will be interesting, these last few laps for Reinhard Heibel as he looks to pass Oldest Pudiclus, this time by the Kingsman Racing 667, moves over and gives that line to your race leader. It also means Terry Crouch will be approaching these guys soon. That could shake things up as well. David Clymer, though, Andrew Slizens, still very close, but maybe spreading out ever so slightly.
And I think it's more so just the ebbs and flows in terms of lap and sort of the consistent marks. After all, the ebbs and flows themselves, Clymer's actually been slow on the average over the past 5 laps or so coming into the 2 to go mark here. So there's been little mistakes from Slizens. And at this point, it's just taking these nice windy roads, looking to take this race home.
Back to the subject of Terry Crouch. I really fully got to believe that he's the man that you have to bet on for the championship. And again, we're talking pretty final about this. It's his championship to lose, I feel. I think that's the better way to put it. It's his to lose. If he makes mistakes, if he gives up too many points to Heibel as these rounds go on, I don't know the math exactly. Maybe Heibel can still get to him in this fight. But Heibel is a long ways behind, 30 points or so. It's his to lose. Terry's just got to maximize everything from here on out. What is going to help him? He's got, I believe, yes, the fastest lap by nearly a tenth over Heibel today. That is a point. He's got, I believe, a point from the pole as well. So those bonuses are what's going to help Terry. If he can focus on those, I think as long as he finishes, even if he finishes second to Reinhardt every single time, I think he's still got this one relatively within his control. And that's a good thing to have. More often than not, Justin, you'll know, more often than not, control is never in your hands as a racing driver. Terry's got a rare opportunity here to play this one out. As long as he can stay calm over the course of the season, I think he's going to be okay. David Clymer, Andrew Slizens still battling 8th and 9th. And Reinhard Heibel has just 1 minute to go until we call this race quits. Looks like one more lap after the one he's on, so call it a lap and a half.
And that's just been how quick the pace has been, should say, from Heibel. Heibel just been able to put it into cruise control. You have Crouch getting stuck in traffic. That's growing the margin too. Eyeballed the second he got up in front of Crouch, he just put on the rocket booster, just ran away, just showed he was trying to just let him save. Once he saved to his number, said, you know what, it's time to go.
This may end up being the white flag for Reinhard Heibel. It's going to be close if he gets one more lap in. 20 seconds to go, and he's in the back portion of the lap. This may be it. Reinhard Heibel, domination once again. He did so at Zandvoort 2 weeks ago. He's done so today in Spain under the lights. And our night race of the season is going to go the way of Reinhard Heibel. That's it. White flag was out. Presented by Whiplash Simcams. Race over for Reinhard Heibel. A big win for 777. We'll see if he's able to make some points up and race for a championship. It's going to be tough, but the comeback starts now as he wins over Terry Crouch for the second race in a row.
Very dominant race, to say the very least, as a lot of the other drivers happy to take this checkered flag the way some of the event action has gone for some. Some battles still going, though.
Here is Clymer and Slizzens once again, turn 10 for these couple of drivers. We'll see if Clymer is able to do anything with it. There's a few more corners to go. In fact, they're in turn 11 now. Turn 12 next up. Got to execute each and every one of these corners. And Clymer just too far back, it looks like. The draft not going to help now unless something catastrophic happens, and for sure, it is Slizzens' position. Behind these guys, though, Oxenzoller, Wernhardt putting together a fantastic amateur performance. The only AM driver to finish on the lead lap today. A very spread out race here under the lights in Spain. Fantastic run at a car 75. It's going to be a big time class win for the James May Racing Machine, and race complete for Sean Cole and Oxenzoller. A big win for car 75.
Need a lot of happy competitors with this checkered. I believe that's the last of the drivers across. Don't think anybody is going to try and find some magic jumps around this track in the nighttime.
No, I don't. Well, we've got one next week for sure. I think that's going to be a highlight of the checkered flag in a week's time, but here, not so much the case as we take a look at your unofficial race results. I don't think much is going to change, but it always could as Reinhard goes to victory lane tonight. I certainly don't think that's going to change at all. Terry Crouch, second place, second best effort, just not quite where he needed to be over the course of the long run. He's got the short run figured out in this Radical SR8, but I think fuel strategy has come back to bite him now 2 weeks in a row. Much better, I will say, this week than last. Randall White goes third, Chris Generelli fourth, and continuing on through your all-pro top 10, it's Kevin Burrows over Johnny Alford, Pete Snake over Andrew Slizzens, and then David Clymer and Sean Cole in 10th.
11th spot today going the way to Olsenzor. Or picking up the AM victory. Was the only AM driver on the lead lap of the checkered, by the way. Cloud, Budiclis, Bill Feist, followed by Sentinelli, Tamara. Sarquist also finished a lap down with Nikum. First driver 2 laps down was Batista. James Dowling did return to the race 3 laps down.
Finishing 21st, it's Ken Eastep. Wilder Vemerick finishes 22nd. David Payne, a pro driver, mired way back in 23rd. Dustin Oberlo out on lap 1. He finishes 24th. And Donald Warren, he joined the session tonight, but did not qualify, did not race. So he's credited there with 25th position. And that's it as far as racing goes. Waiting on drivers potentially to join in for some post-race interviews, but Terry Crouch just not able to execute. We'll take a look at the standings once again. This is coming into tonight, so before the race that we just saw unfold. And again, you see no Reinhard Heibel on this list yet. I think he'll be somewhere in the 7th or 8th range, and we'll start finding a little more difficulty clawing through the field from here, but it's going to be a big gain for him today.
Out of the format, it's extremely difficult, even when you factor in a drop to fully close up, realistically speaking.
Well, these guys actually have no drop weeks. I spoke incorrectly at the top of the season.
Yes, but I was going to say, even if that came into play, it's so difficult to fully close up a full race gap.
Yeah.
First place. That's what I mean by that. So even then, you don't want to miss any rounds, let alone the first round, because it puts you on the back foot, and we've seen the result.
Yeah, we're going to see the difficulty unfold for Reinhard, and you know, if it's maybe a clash with a schedule, maybe a special event or something like that, could it be something that rears its head again later in the season and really holds him back? We'll have to wait and see. I know Terry Crouch was bad luck last season, but I think this season he's got something figured out, and I'll knock on wood for you, Terry. In fact, let's go ahead and bring him in to talk to him as he wraps up a second place effort this evening. Pretty solid run, I gotta say. I think under any other circumstances, we'd be talking about Terry Crouch in a winning sense, but Terry, P2 for you tonight. What happened out there on the track? Why were you second and not first?
Because he is fast. No, I thought I had something, at the beginning, and I just wanted to save it. I knew he could just hang out right behind me all race. So, but I made a catastrophic strategy error. When I had him pass me and I thought, I'll just duck in really quick, I didn't think about the fact that I was giving him basically 2 seconds a lap faster immediately on those same warm tires when I had to bring mine up to temp. And so he got out faster than me. He just did better than me on both stops, actually. Then he got me on the second one. So even if we were pretty close out on track, he just out strategized me today. And congrats to him. It was a great win.
Now, is that advantage going to flip at warmer races where potentially at Bathurst next week we could see much higher attempts and these tires may actually be completely roasted by the time you take new tires, and cold tires might actually help you a little bit, like come up to temp a little bit quicker? Is that going to flip, or is it the same here round after round?
I think it changes per track. Bathurst has a lot more camber when you get into the cambered side of the track, and the suspension compresses and you can work with it a lot more. Here, so many of the turns are high commitment and flat that those cold tires have to come up to temp, and you lose a ton of time in like turn 3 and stuff like that.
And how about this strategy that seems like you guys have all worked yourself into? I know last week you tried to circumvent it, reinvent the wheel a little bit. Now I think we've all learned tires at first stop, no tires at second stop, because you can take so much less fuel in the pit lane so long as you save earlier.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go, unless we find a track where, the tire wear actually was pretty good here. I think after a stint, I was high 80s, so it was certainly doable. It's just, especially when you fill it back up, fill relatively, it's like 25 liters. But it gets a little slippy again when you got, 80% tires with another tank. So I think it's just smarter. It's way too easy to lose half a second or a full second with just a bobble. So why not, burn 2 or 3 seconds and make sure that it's consistent for, 45, 50 minutes.
Well, there you go. Terry Crouch, P2 tonight. Not by much, only 4 seconds on the racetrack after an hour. That's still very, very close. Terry, best of luck to you as you try to hang on to that points lead the rest of the season.
Thank y'all.
Terry Crouch, position 2, I think, again, has to be a lot given the circumstances, but if these two were to go head-to-head, I think maybe things would be a little more dire for Terry, and we'd see Reinhardt really be able to use the most of his skill at this point. It's crazy. These two are so close and yet so far apart at times. Reinhardt is able to let himself loose and walk away with wins.
Indeed, Reinhardt just had the pace for the get-go. It seems once he had his fuel number, as we talked about, now it's the matter of shifting that focus from Spain to Australia and executing in Australia. That's a critical part of that.
Yeah, we've got a pretty chaotic 4 rounds ahead. Even really the rest of the season, aside from maybe Road America, seems to be a little more difficult than we saw tonight. It'll be interesting, and I think a lot more cars packed on top of each other for sure. Bathurst next week, anything could happen. Quite frankly, the smallest of mistakes could absolutely wipe out half or more of the field. They could also wipe out just one car and we have a calm race otherwise, but one small mistake next week at Mount Panorama and bad things can happen. Then Okayama usually tends to be a bit hot in the sim. Suzuka as well, if you run it in the afternoon. We'll see kind of exactly how that works out. Long Beach, very similar to Bathurst in that the walls close in on you, and one small mistake can take out a lot of cars. Then Canadian Tire Motorsport Park should be a lot more spread out. Road America and Brazil, I think, will be a lot more conventional kind of road courses, but even Brazil can be warm. And we're going to see, I think, tires be a lot more important as the season goes on. We got our cold races out of the way here with Spain under the lights.
And now the focus has to be making sure you position yourself for the rest of the way. A lot of these tracks, a lot more Grand Prix style circuits from the get-go outside of the couple of tight street circuits. And the major thing, the more consistent you can run, the better it will be in the long term. And a lot of these tracks have some of the characteristics we've seen from respect to Zanfor more so than I would say Spa. That's going to be so important later on.
You can see there, Victory Lane off to the right. That's where Reinhard Heibel celebrated this evening. We'll see who can do it next week from Bathurst. But upcoming broadcasts here on the channel as we wrap up from Spain. Take a look at them here. Next up for us here at Pit Stop TV, we go down to Southern National Motorsports Park in Lucama, North Carolina, as we have got the iRacing Cars Late Model Stock Tour in official racing. If you want to join in on the fun, you can register for that race and try to make top split. You'll be on the broadcast if you can do it. That's at 8:15 Eastern, the first race of the new week that starts on Monday at 8 Eastern. Then to Wednesday evening, we go to Talladega Super Speedway and start the playoffs for the UFL Elite Series round 9 of 12 on April 19th. And then finally, we resume here with the Simpit Radical Series from Mount Panorama Circuit out in Bathurst, April the 23rd. 3 really, really difficult rounds for these cars, these drivers, as you've got Southern National, a very high-banked, very difficult racetrack. Everything's very close in together. You can absolutely have big crashes there. Big crashes in Talladega go hand in hand, and certainly as well at Bathurst on Sunday. So everything picking up a little bit, everything getting a little more difficult this week. It's going to be a lot of fun here on Pit Stop TV. And Justin, there's plenty of places there at the bottom of the screen to tune in.
Yes, any of that includes Facebook.com at PitStopTV, that one word. On Twitter at PitStopTV_. Twitch.tv has pit_stop_TV. On YouTube, PitStopTV1. But don't forget about Instagram too, at pit_stop_TV. Keep an eye on all things social media when it comes to Pit Stop.
That will do it this evening from Circuit of Barcelona, Catalunya. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you to those who make it happen for us behind the scenes. Of course, Gomez Industries with the series, as well as In Audio, ATVO, Whiplash Media, SimCams, OBS, and iRacing.com for us here at Pit Stop TV. That will do it. We will see you next time, hopefully, at Southern National Motorsports Park in Lucama, North Carolina for the Cars Tour Late Model Stocks tomorrow night for official racing at 8:15 Eastern. We'll see you there.